How many times do you find that your clients are just overwhelmed with the fear and doubt that they have on themselves, their goals, their visions of life? Well, how many times has this happened for you that you have just totally felt crippled by fear and doubt in your life? It's a very common phenomenon. In this video, I want to give you some understanding of firstly how and why fear comes into our life, and then some techniques that you can utilize to be able to help your clients, to help yourself, to be able to not be crippled by it, but actually find a way around it so you can create more emotion, more action in your life. So, first of all, let's try to understand what causes fear and doubt. Most commonly, fear and doubt is a function of us projecting into the future and believing that the difference or the dissonance that we have between us now and us in the future is too high and too much. So, for example, if you project today, right now, as to, hey, here is where I need to be, right? You have a vision of yourself, right? You would think, well, because I need to be there, I need to take this long path. And so I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know what will people say when this happens. Well, do I even have the skills? This will create doubt in your mind. Am I meant for this? You know, the spiritual question that we ask sometimes, am I meant for this? Right? And these things will end up creating fear and doubt in your mind, right? And so fear and doubt is more of a projection that we have of the future than the actual fact of what is happening right now. There is some real fear in our lives, right? If you're crossing the street and you're in a busy street for some reason and you're crossing without lights turned on or whatever, you should have some real fear there, and that's helpful. But a lot of the other fears are so far out in the future and so hypothetical that they actually never really conspire in your life. If you may have noticed, and this is actually research that suggests this, is that about 80-90% of the projection that we have of the future never really happens. So 80-90% of the time, we are actually wrong about what will happen next. So there's almost no reason it would seem like that we should be projecting into the future, but we still do, right? If you had only a 10% chance of winning, would you still play? If the answer is no, then why are we surrendering to this future? Why are we being fearful of this future? It has only a 10% chance for it to ever happen. But we still surrender to it. We still succumb to it. We still are bothered by it. So let's figure out how we can work with this fear, this doubt that gets created in our mind because of the story that we tell ourselves. Which brings me to the first tool. The first tool is called cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is a term, and it simply means that when you have made up a story, you have a chance to make up a different story. Instead of talking in gibberish, let me break it down. So what happens is anytime we have a thought, for example, let's say I pursue my coaching career, what will people say? Right? Now, your default thinking, which is influenced by your past, will take you down a rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole will be, in the childhood when Josie told me I wasn't good enough, and this further will take you. And then after that, Mira joined her, and then my mother didn't do justice to me, and then my aunt would not do justice to me. And what if they start doing the same thing again? And now you're in a loop of fear, right? Which was originated with one thought or one pattern of thinking, which is your default pattern of thinking. Your default pattern of thinking is always, um, not always, but usually is a disempowered way of thinking. Why? Because your usual pattern of thinking is defense based, is protection based. Your mind is designed to defend you, to protect you from any harm or hurt. And so it defaults into a negative so that you don't take action, and hence you're never at risk for anything. Right? So that is what we call a disempowered way of thinking. Now, when you have a disempowered way of thinking, how slow or fast do you think your life will move? It'll move slowly, right? Because you're always kind of questioning everything. You're always doubting everything. You're always wondering if this is right or wrong. And because of that, you're constantly feeling disempowered in that behavior that you actually want to change, right? So you want to go out and do something meaningful with your life, but you're disempowering yourself every day because you're telling yourself about some childhood story that may or may not be accurate, may be accurate factually, but doesn't really have a meaning in your life because that was an instance and not the truth of life. What it's creating is disempowered patterns. Now, to break a disempowered pattern, what you have to organize is you have to slow your thinking down and choose what we call an empowered thought. An empowered thought is a thought that allows you to make forward progress. So instead of putting you in a loop, it takes you towards moving further in your life to create the reality that you want to create. So this thinking pattern, instead of putting you into a loop and making you self-doubt and create fear in your life, creates forward motion in your life, right? And so an empowered thought, so let's say, what will people say? Another way is how I want to be remembered, right? Now, this is a more empowered thought because it is a positive, affirmative, how do I want to be remembered, kind of a question seeking a better future versus relying on not a fun past or some elements of your past, right? And because how I want to be remembered is more of an action thing, right? Because if you go, I want to be remembered as somebody who really helped 10,000 people in his life or in her life, now I'm going to create action because right now I've impacted maybe one, right? So if you want to go towards how I want to be remembered, you may have a more positive, affirmative, more empowered thought. Now, this is not the only way to do this. You could have many different kinds of empowered thoughts. Like it would work based on the persona or the person that we're talking to, right? I am motivated by how I want to be remembered while I'm alive, right? So it's an iteration of the question. It's like, when I walk into the door, how do I want people to see me, right? And because of that, I have a forward motion towards creating better programs, better YouTube videos, be more intentional about my trainings. The products that I work on, I want them to be not just okay, I want them to be phenomenal. All of them are inspired by a fundamental thing of saying, how do I want to be remembered when I walk into the room? How do I want people to see me when I walk into the room? And because of that, I always have an affirmative move versus what will people say. Right? What will people say usually have a negative connotations because it's referencing what have people said in the past versus how do I want people to think about me? And if this is what I want people to think about me, what do I need to do for me to be able to move towards that identity that I want to be remembered as or seen as, right? So it creates forward motion. So what you want to ask yourself, firstly, is cognitively reframe if you're choosing a disempowered thought or you are choosing an empowered thought. It's not a one-time activity. This is a thought practice that you will have to do every single time a disempowered thought is about to come to you or is about to take over. Sometimes it's also about when you're in this disempowered thought, you notice, oh crap, I am in the cycle right now, and you reorient yourself to an empowered thought. And what will happen over time is the power of the disempowered thought will go down. So it'll be less effective and have less hold on you. And the power of the empowered thought will go up because you've been repeating. It's like doing reps, right? If you're doing reps, your muscle's gonna get stronger. You have to keep doing the reps. It's like practicing your mind muscle almost, or your psychological muscle almost. Is because now you're every single time you practice, you reorient your mind. You reorient your mind. You will find over time you've reoriented it completely to a more affirmative action, to an action that actually is helpful to your life versus hurtful to your life. So that's the first tool to when you are struggling with any fear or any doubt, or you're working with a client that is struggling with fear or doubt. Now, sometimes that might or might not work in the moment. And so, what I like to tap into is visualization. See, a lot of the times, what happens is that when we are in our state of fear and doubt, we are projecting into the future as something that is a negative, something that will not work out, right? If I can change this visualization to something that is a positive, I now have the power to take over fear and doubt and make it replace with positive emotions, right? Because the reason fear and doubt is being created is because you have negative emotions about what will happen if you continue this path. And so fear and doubt is creating negative emotions. If I can create positive emotions by having a positive future in my view, now I have a chance to actually move in that view. So what I tend to do is when my client is sitting in fear and doubt, I try to say what positive things can happen, right? And I try to have them visualize what would happen if they did take action. What are positive outcomes that can happen? And my hope is that the vision of themselves that they see in the future will currently flood them with positive emotions versus negative emotions like fear and doubt. If I can flood them with the emotions of joy, happiness, courage, outcomes that they want to have, whatever emotions that are going to make them feel, now I have momentum in a different direction versus the direction that I currently am experiencing with my client, which is where they're fearful and doubtful of their future, right? So see if visualization would help them reorient the negative possibilities that they have designed or now they're envisioning in their life to positive outcomes. Because if they can visualize positive outcomes, they can flood themselves with positive emotions right now, which will allow them to be able to create forward momentum. The third thing that I invite my clients to do is to build anti-fragility. Now, anti-fragility is a term that I learned in a very different context. But what I love about this is it says you don't need resilience, you need anti-fragility. What does that mean? So my understanding of this term, it comes from a book called Anti-Fragility, but the understanding of this term is when we talk about resilience, we talk about going past our pain, right? That's what resilience really means. And sometimes it's really hard to be resilient, right? We don't want to go past our pain. So what anti-fragility asks you to do is instead of thinking about, hey, you're having a downturn, be courageous, stay the course, right? That's what resilience kind of talks about. Anti-fragility says, go through the pain and see it as a learning. So don't think that right now, because you're suffering while you're going down, it's because you kind of have to, I have scars on my face, a warrior, rah, rah, get up and get going. It's to say, oh crap, there's a learning curve that's coming. And then that learning curve eventually will get you back up, right? So anti-fragility is more of the acceptance of the challenges and failures that you're experiencing right now so you can learn from it and not repeat those mistakes again, right? So it's a slightly different take to resilience. And that's why I like it more because it invites us into this dialogue that every time you experience failures, you don't have to like kind of brace yourself, get up and get going. No, it's okay to feel beaten and feel down and feel like crap. I'm not making it the way I want to make it and it's not working out for me, but I'm going to learn something out of it. And this thing that happened for me right now may not happen for me again because I learned from it. Not because I am scared of it, not because I'm fearful of it, not because I doubt it or doubt myself, but I know that the times that are hard that eventually lead to the character that I build, that will be the times that will be better. And then I will have some more hard times because I am anti fragile. I learn from these hard times. I need these hard times. I'm not bothered by the hard times. And so, if we can invite our clients into a dialogue where they can see the beauty of falling down, see the beauty of doubt and fear, see the beauty of how sometimes when it doesn't work out, it's actually okay, you will find that your client can now keep learning. They can keep growing from it. They don't have to feel defeated. They don't have to feel let down. And that allows us to have a different frame of reference, different frame of mind when we're working with clients that are experiencing fear and doubt. Which brings me to model, and that is probably the most effective model, one of the hardest ones to achieve when we are in fear and doubt, but absolutely worth it if we could practice that with ourselves, with our clients, however that would be. And that model is get your client into action, any action. It doesn't matter if the action is right action, wrong action, just action. That's what we are looking for. Here is what happens when you are in action. When you are in movement of any sort of movement, in that time, you have nothing that is really in your mind except the action because you're in motion, right? It's like when you're driving the car, you might have thoughts running through your head, but your focus and attention is on the road, right? Especially if you're a reasonable, responsible driver, which tends to be the case with most of us, is that we would pay attention to the action, even if there are other thoughts and thinking patterns that are running through our head. Our attention is on the action. And that is why action often would beat fear and doubt because you're in motion, you're in action, you are not thinking about the fear. You're not thinking about the doubt that you already have. Now, how to create action? So one of the first things that you want to do is you want to set up some ambitious goals. Okay. So the ambitious goals are, think of them as plan A. Plan A is always an ambitious plan, something that is going to totally get you super excited, super pumped, and get you to go into the direction that you really want to go, right? So the step one is to say, all right, I'm going to set an ambitious goal. I'm going to move towards it, right? Step two is set a realistic goal. And why I like realistic goals is, and I know not everybody's going to agree with this, but the reason why I like realistic goals is because when you have realistic goals, you also can chart a clear path to it. And often, when there's only ambitious goals in our view, we have ambitions, but it's very hard to make a plan around it. And so we get overwhelmed with the lack of action that we can take towards an ambitious goal because it feels so big, so large, so impossible. And in this moment, you're like, how do I get this done? And that overwhelm is what creates the inability to take action. And if you don't take action, well, you get back into fear and doubt, right? We want you to have action, but we want you to be motivated. And that's why you have ambitious goal, but you have a plan B, which is a realistic goal that you also keep in your back pocket, maybe even execute on it if the ambitious plan is kind of overwhelming you, or ambitious goal is overwhelming you. You start with your realistic play, because that way you can at least be in action. And when you're in action, it's easier to switch between plan A and plan B, right? Because you're already in action. There's momentum, there is some energy to it. And so you're not thinking your fears, you're not thinking about your doubts, you're thinking about your possibilities, you're thinking about growth, you're thinking about creation. And that allows us to be able to keep the movement going. So have an ambitious plan, have an ambitious goal, plan A, but also have a realistic goal, plan B. Step three is a three-step process, which is find the patterns, break the patterns, and then create new patterns. Why are these things important? Because every time you will chase the goal, you'll find some patterns that will bring you down, right? Mental patterns, emotional patterns, psychological patterns, energetic patterns, business patterns, repeating patterns that you have created for your own safety and security in your life. Find those patterns that are holding you down. When you find the patterns, you break those patterns and you introduce new patterns. You cannot just break the patterns and leave it alone, because it'll be filled by a default again, right? And when you're filled by default patterns, they are unconscious patterns that are always designed for safety, never for growth. Okay. So you got to create new patterns actively, consciously, proactively, knowing which direction you want to travel so you can have the progress that you want in your life, right? So you want to find the patterns, you want to break these patterns that you found, and then you want to create new patterns that then become your defaults, right? And when they become your default, you find new find patterns, and then you break those patterns and you create new patterns. And every single time you repeat the cycle, you have better patterns compounding over time for you, creating better actions every single time for you, moving you towards your realistic or your ambitious goals, beating the fear and doubt that you had. And lastly, and very importantly, if possible for you, is be in a coaching environment. And there's a reason why I say this, not because I'm a coach and because I train coaches, but what you will find is most people around you are not at the same level of ambition and drive that you have, which means every single time you interact with them, they take away the drive from you. They take away the ambition from you. They make you feel small. They make you think small. They make you question everything that you're doing. And conversations with them are not empowering. You feel like, why am I doing this? Like, this person is my love, this person is my friend, but the conversations with them don't excite you, they drain you. And when that happens, you start to hate on this person, even if you actually love this person. And that's why you need to be in a coaching environment. You need to be in an environment which uplifts you, brings your energy to a 10 out of 10, maybe even 11 out of 10. Because when you're in that coaching environment, when your energy is an 11, a 12, even if somebody brings you down because of whatever season and reason they might be in life, it allows you to be able to still be present for them and to them. And because of that availability, you still end up having a great relationship, even if for now they are not being the greatest support or greatest partner for you. And also at the same point in time, it defends your mind. And when you are in action, you need that defensiveness of your mind. You need that acceleration in your mind. You need that support in your mind. You need that progress in your mind. And so to stay in action, to never allow doubt and fear cloud you or stop you from being in a state of action, find a coaching environment, build a coaching environment, and stay in that coaching environment on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, because this environment is going to be the fuel. You are the sum of your 5 people that you hang out with most. But you know, the biggest factor that people ignore, the 5 people go down by a significant margin based on the weakest link. So if somebody is a big downer in your group right now, they're probably dragging the whole group down. Find a coaching environment where you can be lifted up, because when you're lifted up, you can actually create the other effect. So you can bring that friend that is down right now, is feeling all beaten and defeated, you can bring them up to a higher level. And when they are at the same level as you, now nobody's doubting, nobody's fearful. And because we're not doubting and we're not fearful, we are creating. And when we are creating, this world becomes a better place. Thank you for making this world a better place. I'll see you soon.